Namaste and good afternoon. I'm Mahima Kapoor, researcher and assistant editor at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान नई दिल्ली. Welcome you all to the IMPRI #Web Policy Talk. Today, we have gathered for a talk under the series, The State of Governance, #Public Policy, with Dr. Charu Malhotra on Impact of Tech Rules on India's Atmanirbhar Tech Arena. I feel privileged to introduce the moderator for the session, Professor Amita Singh. Ma'am is the president at NAPSI Disaster Research Group and retired professor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. We welcome you, ma'am. We are fortunate to have Shri S.N. Tripathi, who will be lending his special remarks regarding the session. Sir is the Director General at IIPA, Indian Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi. He is an IS officer of 1985 batch. He took over the charge of Director General, IIPA, in April 2019, while he was still holding the charge of Secretary, Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs, Government of India. He is credited with revolutionizing the Panchayati Raj and Rural Development Department of Odisha. As Secretary IT, he digitized all government orders and other information of Government of Odisha and put them into public domain on website. He is credited with wide-ranging reforms in the tool room concept. Sir has worked as a consultant for UNICEF on food security and women empowerment issues. Welcome, sir. I am honored to introduce the speaker, Dr. Charu Malhotra. Ma'am is the coordinator at Center for E-Governance at IIPA. With more than 30 years of national and international professional experience, Dr. Malhotra is deemed as a global tech evangelist in the domain of digital transformation in governments, cybercrime, safety and security, smart and inclusive cities, technology and public policy formulation, and digital India. Her doctoral research on design of citizen-centric e-governance approach, a study of select ICT-based rural initiatives, still stays as her driving force, her passion. Another area of her interest is training. She holds the privilege of being National Resource Person for Training of Trainers, certified by the Government of India and accredited by Thames Valley, UK. Ma'am has more than 90 publications in international and national journals. We welcome you, ma'am. We're fortunate to have Mr. Chetan S.K. Sharma and Mr. Amit Dubey as the discussants for the session. Mr. Chetan S.K. Sharma is the founder and CEO at Data Mission International. Welcome, sir. Mr. Amit Dubey is a national security expert and co-founder of India Future Foundation. We welcome you, sir. Now, I invite Shri S.N. Tripathi to take the proceedings further, and we look forward to learning from our esteemed gathering. Thank you.
Thank you for a very illustrious introduction. I know it is half truth, but I would not like to deny which one is true. Respected friends and colleagues, and my respected friends and colleagues like Professor Amita Singh, Dr. Charu Malhotra, and all of you who are present here, let me be excused for crossing the boundary line, because before experts speak, I'm again overstepping the Lakshman Rekha. So I may be excused from that. Friends, impact of tech rules on India's Atmanirbhar Tech Arena. It can be analyzed in many ways. At least one thing I would certainly say, that what is the genesis of this? I will only put the legal aspect or what is creating problem in the practical domain. The technical domain will be discussed by many other speakers. So I thought I will add the what we call the jurisprudence dimension of whole issues. And I know Professor Amita Singh and Dr. Charu Malhotra will do justice with the rest of it, which I need not venture even. We all know that Puttaswamy judgment, where 9 judges in August 2017 guaranteed informational privacy as a fundamental right. A new fundamental right was added. We as a student of political science know that right to life and right to dignified life was the only fundamental right, in addition to very limited liberty, which can be circumscribed. But Supreme Court in Puttaswamy judgment said that informational privacy is as good as fundamental right. And if that is the bedrock of the first question, what is that we are supposed to do in this area? In fact, it is as good as now it has become the basic feature of Indian system, that privacy of citizen cannot be compromised. Therefore, a legal system of rules and procedure has to be established, which should take care of these aspects. I'm one of those who believe that Section 43A of IT Act 2000 was only dealing with digital signatures and electronic document and very small things. So there was a need to change the rules of the game, especially the social media and over-the-top content managers. They were claiming that they are a state within a state. They were claiming that they are too big to fail. They were too big to be controlled, and they were changing the regimes in a peaceful and democratic manner. In fact, over-democratization of information, where algorithms are written to inflame hatredness, nakedness, and untruthfulness, even deep fake, went unregulated for pretty long. In fact, not only in India, it went globally. So therefore, need for regulation, therefore need for a legal intervention, need for a state to look into it is more today than it was earlier. So Puttaswamy judgment made this thing very obvious. People are saying that government overstepped it. In fact, government did not overstep. Had the government wanted to overstep, it could have done when Justice B.N. Sri Krishna Committee report was there in the public domain. When there were other issues of how to control these too big to be controlled. So therefore, the new rules are very much in line with these dimensions which Supreme Court has added. And the world should know that India is a democracy where rule of law is prevalent, not rule by law, which used to be there till we became independent. And when rules of the games are clear and the jurisprudence is settled, what is that we can do both technologically as well as in controlling these tech giants? I'm not saying controlling per se, but regulating them so that they will behave properly. Second thing, if we study the GDPR 2018 or our PDPR bill, which is now in the parliament and which is before the select committee of parliament, which is going to give its report. One thing is very clear, that consent and minimalization of information has been very clearly highlighted in our system as well. Consent in terms of purpose and consent in terms of sharing, both are now as good as part of the same extended fundamental right. You can't take my consent for project A and make me naked in front of rest of the world with and without my limited consent. Similarly, you can't ask more questions that is necessary. Like if I go to a doctor, if he asks me whether I'm suffering from cancer, whether I may be suffering from only coronavirus, and he knows both the things that I'm suffering A and B, and then he makes this, gives it to the cancer supplier agencies. This is neither consent nor purposeful consent. Therefore, tech needs to be regulated. And at least to that extent, I'd say, even if sounding highly undemocratic, that is one thing which needs to be done. Second thing, which is as important today, is I think Dr. Chetan and Dr. Mehta and Anita ji and Dr. Charu will highlight all these things. Social media is safe harbor. This provision had to be looked into greater detail, because for the first time we are proposing what GDPR could not propose, that what is the threshold limit on which there should be control. India is initiating that dialogue that 5 million plus customers or registered customers should be the threshold when they should be made accountable for at least A, B, C, and D. And what A and B and C India is deciding or subscribing is a very limited thing. One, you should have a grievance officer, there is no doubt, there is no dispute. One, you should be able to trace the origin of a particular message. C, in case the need be, you may be asked to do the necessary as per the quota, as per the rule of law. So there is nothing wrong. I don't know why tech giants are unnecessarily creating information. Over the top platform does not mean that you are over the state or over the country or over the world. OTT has to be understood simply as a platform, and no platform can change the democratic discourse of any country, and that to an India-sized country, which is 1 billion plus people. And where one more thing is there, which I would like to highlight, that the citizen as consumer, as citizen as a user, and citizen as a data point, this also need to be understood both by technology companies as well as tech service provider. Citizen's absolute right of his privacy cannot be compromised because he happened to have given some consent either vaguely or reading a 2600-page consent letter, which nobody ever reads. So therefore, citizen has to be seen to be what we call it balak, as we call it. The deities are said to be the permanent minors in protecting their interests. So that way, consumer has to be handled. And here in social media world, ma'am, the consumer is the business. Consumer is the product. Facebook is Facebook because 3 billion consumers are using. And Facebook cannot play with 3 billion people multiplied by 3 billion people and convert into 9 billion types of possibilities. So they have to understand these aspects. And in these areas, they open the scope for Tech Atmanirbhar. Because if the people are interacting with each other, do we have a Facebook which is made in India? Do we have Koo, which is the alternative of, let's say, Twitter? Or do we have Chingari, which is as good, or Reel as good as the Chingari? And many such tech giants startup can work on these opportunities. Because when the government is willing to regulate what we call it Sarkar, Bazaar and Samaj, then the role of tech giants cannot be away from this. So this is the first submission that I would like to make. Second thing, in India or any such developing countries, we have a lot of our social fault lines. Any tech giants, if they makes an attempt to crack this or like to highlight this or convert into hate speeches into a narrative, global or otherwise, that will also create a problem. We all know what in Hindi said, जब परिवार टूटेगा, पड़ोसी आकर लूटेगा. Whenever somebody inflames or somebody puts a kerosene on your fault lines, it will not be the sure way of pushing the fire behind. It will only add fuel to the fire. So therefore, any tech giant cannot convert fault lines as so-called democratic narratives. We have to be very clear on this issue. In fact, some people say that स्वर्ग में रहकर स्वर्ग का अनुभव नहीं किया जा सकता. You can't be enjoying the tech benefits and then keep on regulating it also. But I'm one of those who believe that the way a child in the womb of a mother, the mother cannot give her love and affair unless she has seen it after proper delivery. Same thing is true for the tech giants also. The consumer must see the effect of his privacy being compromised, being sold in the dark net or over the net, or converted to deep fake, to defame me, or to extort money, or are converting and playing with my image. Therefore, these things must be taken into account, and case the big companies also must know that they have to be behaving responsibly. Atmavalokan or Singhavalokan, we were highlighting that you must look back before you move fast forward. Why not tech giants? In fact, why I am saying this, because this gives an opportunity for Indian startup, Indian ecosystem to fill up those gaps, be it technologically or be it product-wise, or convert into an Indian platform. That is what Chinese company has done. China stopped these giants. They know democracy, but they control them. And today they have gone made in China products, which are globally ruling. The time has come for Indian tech industry also to come with a similar product, or maybe more competing and consuming product, so that these tech giants can be controlled by made in India product. And then we can say that we will be Atmanirbhar technologically. And we have shown to the world that in Y2K problem, how Indians control the world. We were the problem solver of the world in Y2K issue. Though it was a small issue, but it was supposed to be as good as the global financial crisis, or maybe what we call it, even 2030 global depression. They may not be impactful the way they were, but the fear was of similar types. Even today, I am reminded, in fact, I was yesterday reading in a newspaper, Australian government has said that certain platforms should not allow below 16-year-age children to become their registered member without their parents' expressive consent. Otherwise, darknet, porn, all those drug peddlers, they are using the acceptance in one platform and converting them into a user in another platform. So they are not responsible for that. If Australia is controlling them, why not India? And unless we control this stage, and we will not be able to compete and come out with a reasonable product in these areas. I'm fully conscious that IMPRI, a startup and research think tank, does a lot of work on these areas. And time has come to put technologically competent people and those who have done those others to discuss on these issues that become to a conclusion. What is that is missing in India which can make us Atmanirbhar, and what is that which can make us better off? Otherwise, the code will enter into these areas and we will make problem for ourselves. And then we all know Tarikh pe Tarikh. That is not the best way, but the fact remains that the court will intervene when we don't have any competing product A, or some product company is exploiting the innocent Indians who might be illiterate, but they have no business to be exploited, who might be not knowing the English. Today, Facebook has come with another alibi. We don't have AI in Bengali, therefore Bengali people can abuse each other. So what the hell, if you don't have AI, don't circulate it. You be responsible for it. Then you will not be allowed safe harbor class. So all those things need to be discussed. We must learn from the global experience. And one more thing I would certainly like to highlight, and the technocrats are there who will interpret these signals. The Amazonization of our Facebook. Every company is becoming Amazon types. As if I'm only a platform and rest of the world can come. And then suddenly I come with Amazon Basic and the rest of the product need to leave the market and platform. Similar thing is likely to happen with Facebook also. I know one study which is now suppressed, not available on Google platform, how French language is being suppressed and killed in any search engine by the Google, because Google was first charge sheeted by the French government maybe 20 years earlier. And since then, all algorithm, anything French has to be after the last 1 billion search, then French first. French is first among the French, but not in the global search, even if many people are viewing it. Many more things will happen. The internet will also ensure the death of languages. We had 300 plus language people were interacting. Today in internet, only 2 or 3 languages are there. Even Hindi, you will not find a lot of website where you can search unless you are using the search engine, which is compliant, and maybe algorithm is friendly to Hindi language. So this will change the way how people interact. This will change how societies govern themselves, and this will also change how tech giants behave themselves. When I am the product, I have every business to say which way my consent, which way my minimalist information will be used. And tech giants can't take the refuse that I am too big to be controlled, or I am too small a consumer which can set it right. Therefore, this is the duty of people like those who are today to discuss on these issues. I will join you in due course, ma'am. Thank you for giving me a chance to share some of my ideas. I know the legal side of it must be kept in mind. Technology is available as a platform. Technology requires user and consumers to come and rule the world. But it is also the philosophy behind it, the science behind it, and this technology cannot be serving society unless society is able to control the technology. And I'm one of those who believe that in India, we have rejected due process of law. It is not American jurisprudence where due process law is good enough. We have said and very clearly said that in accordance with law. So unless your conduct is in accordance with law, it is said to be unlawful. And therefore, these tech giants and algorithm writers and readers and interpreters should rejoice only when we are compliant to the national laws and national sovereignty, and don't say that technology is too big to be failed, therefore it cannot be controlled. Many tech giants with 32,000, the IPR do not exist. We have seen BlackBerry becoming history. We have seen Nokia is no longer there. And we have seen that how Yahoo, which was supposed to buy Microsoft, has become a persona non grata in tech world. So tech world is very cruel. They are not friendly to their own competitors. They will certainly be not friendly to a country. But fact remains that we must control them. We must set them right. Unless they regulate themselves, the law of the land will prevail, shall prevail, and due process of law is not what India follows, which is America follows, which is followed by America. We follow what is called in accordance with the law prescribed. And our rules 2021 has prescribed certain conditions. I hope and trust that today's discussion will highlight these and such issues. Thank you very much for giving me a chance. I will be in listening mode for a while and I will join you in the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So without any further ado, let me invite Charu ma'am to start her lecture. Charu ma'am, over to you.
I thought Amita ma'am will take over. Okay. So thanks a lot, Dr. Kumar, and to Director General IIPA for his mind-provoking thoughts. I would just start as requested by the organizers. I would just move on to the presentation so that we are on the same page when it comes to the presentation. Just give me 2 minutes, please. The presentation would essentially highlight all the key points that I want to discuss today, particularly as the topic given to me was on Atmanirbhar Bharat and impact of technology rules for an Atmanirbhar Tech India. And Atmanirbhar Tech India has been recently redefined as Techade for India. We'll go into that. Very recently, when we were going through newspaper, we realized that Prime Minister has announced that this decade will be India's tech decade. So it is technology plus next 10 years that we intend to foresee in our country. Now, what is Techade? For the sake of our beginners, foundation technologies of Techade are essentially three. It's based out of NASSCOM study. A is cloud computing, B is big data and analytics, and C is cybersecurity. Of course, there are other technologies also, but these are the three prime technologies. In our session today, we would talk about repercussions of these technologies on Indian scenario with special reference to Bharat in India. Okay, so with that background, we would talk about new age technologies. First, that what are these three foundation technologies, how they fit into bigger picture, what is the repercussions of each of these technologies, as I said, particularly on policy spaces, and how we would pick up drone policy and weaponize drones as an instance, because that's one policy that has been truly agile in our country. And then we'll see how still we need to do a lot on that front. To begin with, new age technologies or emerging technologies or disruptive technologies, whatever name you might like to call it with, are all focused on three pillars. They can be segregated in three pillars: artificial intelligence, immersive technologies, and digital platforms. Particularly in AI, we've heard the use of terms like self-driven cars. We have heard about robotics. We've heard about conversational user interface. So this is the first and the most important pillar. Without any overemphasis, we move on to another important pillar, which has simplified interfaces, which has made it easier for the user to be immersed in the virtual reality as if it is new reality. And that is why they are called as immersive technologies. A, because you are literally immersed in them, and B, because they are ubiquitous. You can wear them as sunglasses, you can wear them as a t-shirt, you can wear it as your smartwatch, etc. The second category is now having a new domain of research, which is very popular, and all of us must look at it with complete alertness. That is metaverse. If you would have heard recently, metaverse is that the line between the virtual world and the physical world will be so blurred, it will be submerged into each other, where we won't even get to know whether we are in real world or in virtual world, as we saw it in Matrix and as we saw it in Transcendence also, two international movies. First two pillars require excellent connectivity. They require excellent storage capacities. They require trust mechanisms or smart contracts, and that is offered by digital platforms. So the third category is essentially the foundation for first two categories of new emerging technologies, which makes it possible for any domain or any vertical to imbue these two pillars, artificial intelligence and immersive technologies, and make it a reality to change the experiences. Like DG mentioned, Shri S.N. Tripathi mentioned, that we are entering into a world where consumer is the ultimate queen. So the experiences, the consumer experiences are made possible by AI and immersive technologies. However, the real technology, hardware and software and the platforms come from the third pillar, digital platform. So this is entirely in a very simple manner, new age technology family. Now, in this new age family, when we talk of Atmanirbhar Bharat, I just picked up some snippets of what India has done in last 4 or 5 years, and we came up with very interesting news items. And it's very visible to each of you. We have, made advents in digital governance. We have come into what is called as digital economy. I heard Professor Amita Singh talking about Gati Shakti, and yes, we would have a multimodal singular approach to infrastructure through dashboard and digitalization, which is also a reality in our country. However, now this is where all of us take a pause, okay? However, all these technologies are spurred by the first pillar and the second pillar, and both have their limitations. They are based on artificial intelligence, which are nothing but self-learning algorithms, and they are data guzzlers. They eat and munch and chew and ruminate on humongous data at high speed, high variety, and all this is happening in such a real time that the experiences we get should be taken with pinch of salt. I have just picked up some instances of how smart weapons have, targeted at harmless civilians. I have focused on some news items of where robots have wanted, it's like Frankenstein kind of a culture where robots want to have their own existence. They decide on their own priorities, where decisions for governance taken by AI-based bots have taken wrong decision because the photograph of a political leader of a particular country matched so closely to the real person that the fine was levied on the photograph. Okay, so these are just snippets which caught my attention, and there are so many other which are actually very petrifying. They are not as harmless as what we just see on the screen. For example, there are instances where we have seen drones being weaponized and nation states aggravating cybersecurity threats in such a, with so much of slyness, if I can use that word, that it's very tough to fathom also what hit you on critical information infrastructure of the country. So there are instances everywhere galore. It's not just about privacy, which Shri S.N. Tripathi mentioned, but it is also about security. It is also about biasness. It is also about all this going beyond our control. And that is why I want India to sit tight on this seat of this journey towards decade and right now ruminate over possibilities. So I got some best paper award on this, and I'm just sharing with you my concerns that were presented in the same event where we got this award. It's a co-authored work with 2 other authors. So the basic ethical issues with new emerging technologies are: number 1, machines are replacing humans blindly, if I can use that word. Okay, we don't want to be replaced on certain levels or for certain functionaries. However, even complex decision making has come in the hands of so-called smart machines. Number 2, because our digital footprints are so huge because of this use of technology, like we know Internet of Things will instrument and integrate everything. All of us know that as of now, smart cities would not just be making our life easier, but they'll be constantly prying on us. I mean, if you recall George Orwell's 1984, unethical hacks will become the way for the government to govern us, surveillance government. Okay, so unethical acts will be both from the rogue nation states and probably from some countries who choose to do it for their citizens or against their citizens, if I say. Third is that as of now, so much of data has already been captured and analyzed by our smart TVs, by our Alexas, by our smartphones, by everything that is smart around us, by the sensors around us, that it is already biased by our own human thinking. For example, try anything like a simple translator facility on Google, okay, and say, I am a nurse. This person is a nurse and needs a stethoscope. So the translation is, ये एक nurse है और ये stethoscope चाहती है. Okay, so it is already gender biased against in several ways, because and if you say the same thing for a doctor, it would translate as, and we have tried it, my researchers and I, and it would say, ये एक doctor है और ये चाहता है. So unconsciously databases are saying that the senior positions in medical field are all males and females are probably helping them to be just assistant or just their assistants, which is such a biased database. Similarly, you have databases which are biased against race, against color, against countries, one country against another, and it is a different digital hegemony. You know, databases are created by people with warped mindset. So it is there we need to attack. It's not just digital devices which are creating this kind of Frankenstein loop, but it is also people behind these devices who have already created databases that need to be clean and validated afresh. Last but not the least, these databases or these machines or these setups, technical setups, are being controlled by legal and regulatory framework, which is also lopsided against elite. So non-inclusive policies are the reason for that. For example, if we pick up our PDP, which was being discussed by Shri S.N. Tripathi also, the reason it has thankfully not come into existence is because it was particularly insulating all the agencies from sharing their data. And it gave them a blanket right to capture our data. So that is why this kind of non-inclusive approach, despite so-called collaborative approaches, is something we need to reconsider and relook. With this background, I paint a gory picture for you, and that is why this is deliberately a black slide, okay? This is, if we don't check ourselves right now, if people like the organization IMPRI would not do more brainstorming like this, we might end up in a pest dilemma. Pest dilemma is politically, we might have, all the crimes which are originating from digital devices remotely controlled. We might come into prime states, set up, like I said, 1984, George Orwell state. We might have robots controlling us, Frankenstein. I said this word 3 times probably already. Okay, and we might have leaders who are just dummy leaders and are aided by their conversational Alexas and Siris to guide them, take policy level at the strategic points. So this is my political dilemma, that very soon we would have Industry Revolution 5.0, where human beings at strategic level would be aided by robots at strategic level. So there will be different categories of robots: robots for transactional job, robots for management jobs, and robots for strategic jobs. So these robots could become alter ego of our political leaders, and that is what I fear. And that is where governments should right now look into, to not just not just check this policy, but check the algorithms of these devices. I'm not going into economic part because that is the most hashed part in our country, that value for money and whether we should invest so much return on investment. I'm not going into it, but I come to the next part, which is social part of such technologies doing damage to our country. I will not just focus on alter ego of the leaders, but I'm looking at a general situation where new age technologies would create a different kind of unemployment. Now, unemployment, when I say, should be looked into from current situation, where our education policy, I mean, I know we have NEP in pipeline, but it's very tough to implement NEP. All of us know that. So with current setup, with current ecosystem, are we not creating robots to substitute people who are already not having adequate skills? Okay. I know as a person working in this field that robots can never replace creative leaders. Robots can never replace strategic thinkers. But robots would definitely replace people in restaurants, or people who are your stenographers, or people who are doing mundane chores. So till the time we are not creating such skill sets in our country through the entire education system or related system industry setup, do we really need to imbue new age technologies with so much of gusto? That's number one. Number two, already pandemic has shown us how alienated we are from our kids. Okay, they are glued to the digital devices 7 hours a day. They want to play online gaming with multiple players across the world, but they do not want to sit and chat with you and play Ludo in physical world. So robo-human relationships, I mean, you might have your kids or grandkids or kids who want to marry a robo. And if you don't believe me, see this movie called as Her, H-E-R, and you would realize how the new generation, Gen Z, is so fond of digital, presence that they really want to move in that direction. Of course, health issues are there, and how much of health is at stake is a matter of research. When it comes to 5G implementation and 6G implementation, I leave it as a food for thought for all of you. Also, how good is IR 4.0 and 5.0 is, we really need to look into it, because I think before we go ahead with technology inculcation in our existence, we should restudy the needs and aspirations of our country and its people before thinking that these technologies are good for our health in a national perspective. The last point, in social context, I worry about robots also seeking to have their own caste hierarchy, which people like you and me are trying to do away with. We might have Brahman robots, we might have Kshatriya robots, we might have Shudra robots, permit me to say that, and so many other possibilities. Okay, so a new social order for robots is possible. Why I'm saying robots particularly is, robots are a convergence of all other technologies I just showed you. So you might create a different unpredictable scenario, which you need to look into again. And technically, apart from other aspects, do you realize we are all connected on internet, and you wake up one morning and there is no internet in the entire world? How will systems function? Would you revert back to pigeons for message sharing? Would you revert to paper and pen again? If yes, thankfully yes. Okay, because the kind of dependence we have done on technology is something we need to reconsider, and our policies have to look into it very pragmatically. Last but not the least, in this best dilemma, which is my starting and maybe my last point also later, I would close on this note again. If we are so much dependent on technology, we are not just threatened in the social context or in political context, but please understand, with SDGs looming on our head, we might go very non-green in nature. Okay, we might need graveyards and cremation grounds for robots. I'm not talking of simple e-waste. I'm talking of disposing of those technologies which are all around you and would need another updation and upgradation in the entire situation, in the complete perspective. Hence, this is my ultimate nightmare, which I've shared with you, but I would move on in current context. In current context, all these new age technologies have particularly created a lot of concerns in number one, cyber security. Number two, in terms of cyber crime at nation state level. Okay, in terms of cyber war, cyber radicalization, in terms of cyber terrorism, etc. Number three, confidence building of citizens in technology is a major issue which all countries need to look into. In terms of right to privacy, previous speaker, Director General Shri Tripathi mentioned. However, internet freedom is another thing we need to look into, because, dear friends, we are moving towards a possibility of balkanization of internet. We are moving towards a possibility of each country having their own internet. So the whole spirit of internet will get defeated. And hence, principles and standards and rules and decision making about internet governance also needs to be reconsidered. Taking a pause here, I would leave this image for you to know about what is my concern. I have just in very simple terms graphically represented what Dr. Arjun Kumar gave me as my assignment of thinking about Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat for me is not just self-reliant, indigenous technology-based Bharat. It is also a blooming Bharat. It is also about this fruit of my labor being consumed globally. So it's like, going vocal for local is my concern. And till I do not have strong legal and regulatory framework, till my implementation strategies are not holding my tree straight, the fruit of technology adoption, the dissemination of technology from my country to other parts of the world would be very poor. And it would defeat the purpose of self-reliance. I cannot afford to be a Kook Manduk. I need to be self-reliant for my own self as well as for global consumption. So as RDG says, go vocal, go local is all what we should focus on when we design our legal and regulatory framework for our country. So how do we do that? Taking a pause with this picture is a reminder to us from Marshall McLuhan, who said that when technology changes, what he's trying to say that the framework of technology is equally important. It's not just the implication of the technology or the technology itself, but the framework in which it is contained. So it is directly connected to what I said here, that legal and regulatory framework serves as the root of prosperity for Atmanirbhar Bharat. Okay, so what we need to do is, because technology is changing so fast, but policy is not changing, we need to have a collaborative ecosystem, collaborative in real sense of word, collaborative not just in terms of, minuscule representation of academia and decision making, but think tanks, independent experts at the grassroots, citizen representations, unions, communities, all coming together, debating on an issue, coming up with a POC, and then enhancing it for different contexts as per the needs and aspirations of the citizens themselves. So it is not just people-centric application that Atmanirbhar Bharat should look at, but it is also people-included policy framework that Atmanirbhar Bharat needs to have. Why we need it? Because now technology has changed politics in the global scenario. Technology has changed our diplomatic relationships. You've seen all the words that are put in here. These are not words. Each of them are bulky concerns for Atmanirbhar Bharat. Technology has changed the expectations of the citizens. Technology has changed the delivery mode for governance. So we are no longer perched on that complacent seat. We are sitting on a bullet train which is constantly moving in a spiral, fashion. So we have to hold tight and still create new frameworks so that this journey is smooth. That is why my moot question to all of you is our policy making as agile as technology is? Is our policy making as collaborative as technology is? Okay, because still we don't follow the same principles in policy making, technology will soon create a pest dilemma for all of us. And that is what we should not let India come to. Okay, so as an example, drone policy. Yes, it's an agile policy. Kudos to it. It came so quickly. First one in March 2021, the next one in June 2021. Self-regulation that we've been touting for ages. Okay, no rules. Go to the Digital Sky platform and you could just, on your own register your drones. However, the more simplified it is, the more concerned we are. Why? Because drones, as you know, are flying sensors, collection of sensors. You never know what they are watching. You never know what they are clicking. You never know what they are recording. I'm not even talking of weaponized drones. I'm just talking of delivery drones, as simple as what you would have seen in any Spider-Man movie or elsewhere. Okay, so and drones, if they are imbued with the first AI category, which I showed you, they recognize you when they're flying overhead. Okay, they know where you live. They capture all that. They know how you are feeling, because don't forget, you have sentiment analysis also as a part of artificial intelligence. Secondly, I'm also worried about, the regulations about national safety and about citizens being aware of it. You cannot come up with a policy till you don't come up with sensitization rules and regulations for that. So when a drone is flowing over me, am I aware of what it can capture? Is it really necessary? And I think that was mentioned by Shri S.N. Tripathi also. So we have to be very particular about these. Apart from that, yes, we know about cybersecurity concerns. Why just drones? I mean, I've said it in n number of forums. I mean, we are looking forward to driverless cars, but you know what driverless cars are? They are moving data centers about us. They know which song I want. They know where I stop. They know, at what speed I drive. They know how I ram my door when I have had a fight with my spouse, etc., etc. So they are moving data centers about me. And these data centers are not in my control. I mean, please understand, the data is getting streamed to the data centers which are lying elsewhere. Of course, Government of India has come up with the regulation that in terms of telecom infrastructure, we should not rely on external countries. However, endpoints are still coming from those countries. So please understand, even if telecom infrastructure is being indigenously manufactured, but if I'm holding a smartphone which has come to me from gray market, it is as fatal as the infrastructure which we had talked about. So national security concerns, like I said about car for individuals, is very complicated for drones in my country. Okay, hence key problems. I'm summing up what I just rambled in various ways and with different, variations of my passion. Number one, India needs to look into its AI policy again. Yes, Niti Aayog has some document about use of responsible AI. Yes, Ministry of Electronics and IT did try to come into a global platform through its wonderful event called as RAISE. However, we need to again relook at those policy documents for not just guidelines, but acts. Okay, what is permissible in the eye of law is more important than what I should do and what I should not do. Second is what kind of advantages we look from new age technologies. Do we really need it? And if we need it, how do we scale them and replicate them in the context in which it is required in our country? And last but not the least is ethical use of these technologies. Biased databases, as I said, are very critical concerns. So how do we handle this? From regulation, it's better to move towards self-regulation. Okay, we need to have advocacy, sensitization, we need to have global coordination, we need to have self-regulation amongst everybody, right from manufacturer to consumer to big tech companies who are creating these Facebooks and Instagrams, to tighter laws at a national level. So my recommendations are that we need to come back to basics again. We need to come back to civil society with more gusto. We need to look into global consortium more. We need to have more collaborative approaches where academia is the center, the pivotal, because academics with God's grace would never look at commercial benefits in majority of the instances. And also at individual level, listen dear friends, we are running in cybersecurity awareness month, okay, October. We as individuals should not forget that endpoint is in our mind. Like Lieutenant General Pant says, endpoint is our mind. So we should be digitally hygiene when we go on social media, because please don't forget the pyramid is individual, country, enterprise and country. So till individuals are not sanitized in use of technology, organizations could be vulnerable and hence the country could be vulnerable. And there are very interesting books for that. Please, if somebody wants, there's a book called a Cyber Unsafe. I just landed with that book. Try to have a look at it and you'll find it very interesting. So I close by saying that to be Atmanirbhar in India, we need to have systems approach and design approach. Okay, systems approach is that we should look at interconnected ripple effect of one component on another again. Not just tech, but non-tech, not just industry, but total ecosystem of our country. Who needs what? Number two, co-creation is the only way forward in terms of creating technologies, implementing technologies, refining technologies, as well as creating policy frameworks for these technologies. Therefore, we should collaborate, formulate, intervene, again collaborate to monitor and control, and then go into a systems approach of feedback loop and keep improving these systems and the total setup of the country. Thanks a lot, everybody, for inviting me, for hearing me, and for encouraging me. Thanks a lot. With your permission, ma'am, may I stop to share?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, thank you.
Over to you, Amita.
So, congratulations, Dr. Charu Malhotra, for an extremely comprehensive, I have no words. In fact, I was just stupefied about the detailed and the depth of your lecture today. And I'm not going to mince my words in saying that while you are a technologist and we expected very little from you, you have broadened your approach to the wider areas of social sciences, of economics, of anthropology. And it's really wonderful listening to you. It took me some time to wake up from your lecture and start putting words together, because I was still in a thinking state where you had taken us to, taking on a tower and then opening the window and say, look at the big universe. So the big universe is too big to be handled. But few points, I would mention for discussion purposes. Of course, I cannot handle the amount that you brought in for us. And each section, each slide that came in was a full book in itself. The first and the most important thing is that you are a technologist who's taken a very holistic view. I wish others could also do it the way you have done it. And you are definitely a leader in this. Very holistic view. And I'll tell you what was the most important aspect of the holistic view that attracted my attention. While you were discussing the nature of technology, you mentioned that the technology can be regressive and progressive at the same time. So to go on harping and chest beating from the policy centers and say that we are going to become digitized because we want to be progressive India, because I want to take India to the 30th, some centuries ahead of us, is, I think, a very shallow claim, in the sense that those who understand technology actually would never make those comments, because technology can be very regressive. If you give freedom to your child without the regulations and the sanskar, which we call ethics, within the home, then I'm sure you're going to lose your son. He would never be looking back into the home to his parents with that respect, and so is the technology. And that also reminded me of the 2016 book of Donna Haraway, Chetulosine, a very interesting title, Staying with the Trouble. How do you learn to stay with the trouble? That was the title, and she called it Chetulosine. And people have described Chetulosine in different ways, technologists and social scientists. And the issue is that we overlook the regressive aspect of technology. And we think that technology is going to reform itself as it moves. It's dangerous. And now it's become more dangerous. And after hearing you, I'm sure we need to have a steel frame control. We'll have to invent Weber again to regulate the hierarchies in the technology. Because drones, AI, we have just released this enormous technology in the cyber world without having any control on it. Everything that I do in my house is revealed to somebody outside without my knowledge. That is to be used. Earlier we were just thinking that, why have CCTV cameras at home? Because somebody could watch you as well, at some place. So let's not have the CCTV cameras everywhere. But now I think CCTV camera is only a minor culprit. There are bigger, servers sitting over there recording you. There's, trillion of data half a second is released, and they know, what you like. You like to eat the cherry over the cake, or you like to cut the cake from the left, or you only like the chocolate cake, or you don't like it at all because you are, egg allergy. Everything is known. So what is this privacy issue about? So we have really failed, I would say, and taking a gasp from Charu's, expressions, we have perpetuated loss of privacy. The more the demand for privacy, we are only demanding the surface of something which is much, much deeper. And going back, we were making fun of Donna Haraway in 2006 and 7. We said, oh my God, she's talking about it as hallucination. What is this hallucination? And she is a social scientist. She saw that in 2003 and 4 book, she saw that it was a hallucination. We are releasing a Frankenstein about whom we don't know. And today, Charu, you said it. And then a progressive mind will create progressive technology, in the sense that if you are not a patriarch, then you would create a technology which is calmer towards gender differences. But if you are yourself like that, then whatever you do, and 90% of technologists, I think, working around 5 minutes of talk, and they expose themselves as patriarchs. And that is a bigger problem of science. And that is also one of the reasons why most of the girls leave mechanical engineering, or they leave, civil engineering. How many girls are there in many of the engineering departments or medical departments? Because some are treated to be as completely, women departments. You take up within the university, which is a progressive sphere, the number of departments, they really, the more the science departments, the more the vision of a woman is to be a very submissive, Sati Savitri, to be married off and then bearing children after a particular age. If she crosses the age, then she is no worth. This is a mental setup. Whatever you do, this goes on. The more you see the science departments, the more you come across all this. And they are the ones who are going to create this regressive or progressive technology for us. Can we offer them the license to create? No. And chatbot has already proved it. If you remember chatbot tragedy, the Microsoft had created a chatbot, and that was introduced by Microsoft for, I think, only 12 to 14 hours in America. And chatbot was abusing women. The kind of language they were using for women was an American language, which Trump and his supporters were using against the woman contestant. Finally, she withdrew from there. And this is the language that technology learns for itself. What if I open my computer and they say, oh, you so woman, you're back again? Oh my God, I close the laptop and say, you go to rest. So this is the kind of future we are entering into. We could fight men. We would never be able to fight the patriarch in a technology. So that's the drawback which is coming now. Also, one thing that we're going to increase trafficking in various ways, because everything is known to everyone. So some businesses are definitely going to increase, and many dangerous drug businesses, trafficking businesses, crime, it's going to be unattended. Then, very important thing that Charu's lecture has mentioned is about a collaborative ecosystem. While we need certain people to sit together and frame it. I remember in 2006 and 7, there was Secretary of DOPT. I don't remember his name now, but very humble and down-to-earth person. And he used to come down to the university driving his own car, Maruti 800. And he used to say, we need professors, please come. Teachers, we need teachers, come down to us, talk to us. And he formed certain number of committees in which, from Jamia, Furqan Ahmad, then from here, JNU, and from Delhi University, many of us were sitting and talking to him. That brought the origin of the 15 reports of Administrative Reforms Commission. And that's a very progressive set of reforms that have been suggested over there, even in the IT reforms. But I'm sure now it is outdated because much more need to be added, like AI, cloud, and this is something which is a hurricane on our privacy. Cloud and all, once everything is automatically, you click the button, everything goes on cloud. So if there is somebody, a thief is sitting on the other side, you are putting your data on privacy, the other person is extracting your data and reframing your life. So then we come to the last and very important point that you made. Of course, I can't bring all the great points that you made, but this is a point that many years ago in the 30s, Karl Polanyi has made. And interestingly, I'm sure you may not have read Karl Polanyi because you are not from that field, but economists and Marxist economists and left-oriented economists and social scientists never miss out on Polanyi. He said that he was writing a book on the Great Transformation. And he said government is creating markets, because during those times, creation of a market was a progressive thing, just like the government is creating IT today. It's a progressive market, because progressive means it's going to bring more money to you, more exposure to you, bigger vision on how to jump over your poverty. Anything that crosses poverty is progressive. And we don't debate beyond that. What is progressive? You can wear nice clothes, you can flash the gold on your body, and you can use the cosmetics and good lipsticks and good hairstyle. You look rich, so okay, you're progressive. Modern and a developing domain, growth and development. Great debate in the social science on the two things. So we are pushing growth at the cost of development. And when we push growth at the cost of development, Karl Polanyi said that you create markets, but you forget that markets are embedded into society. When you create a market in disjunction of a society, a social norm, then you create a market which is a dead market. So what helped during the COVID? Same Manrega helped. The big market didn't help. Manrega helped. And this was the same Manrega which in 2014 and 15, the government was doing best to eradicate. They put all the eggs in one basket of criticizing Manrega. But during the COVID, Manrega helped to tide over the poverty of this country, the poor people of this country that had again and again dropping below the poverty line. They had crossed the poverty line, but every day thousands were dropping below the poverty line. And so in the second and the third phase of COVID lockdowns, the government decided to pump more money into Manrega so that people could really find a livelihood. So what helps? The embeddedness, and you spoke about the embeddedness, that we can create technology, but the embeddedness of technology is in the society. So look at the society and design a technology that suits your society. Don't try to absorb people from Western countries. Bring them here and tell them, जी हजूर, आपके लिए देश हाजिर है, कुछ भी कीजिए आप इसका. That is going to be the most dangerous thing, and we have been doing it. From earlier reforms till today, we have been doing it. And how much technology has gone to waste? One point that you made, it was a smaller point, but I make it big because in international politics, when Russia and America dissolved their animosity and Détente was reached, end of the Cold War, you know what was the biggest problem? The biggest problem was, where are they going to dump their nuclear weapons? You know, the mutually assured destruction capacity that they were fighting against each other. If one gets A, the other will get A plus, then A plus plus, then B plus plus. So like that, you know, they were rising. At one point, they became friends. Now there was another problem. Now the whole world will be their enemy, because either they'll go in the ocean floor and dump their nuclear weapons, or they go into another planet and dump. Why are they so interested in finding a planetary space these days? Do they want to dump their nuclear weapons over there? Now those nuclear weapons are not in use. They will not be used because mankind is now no more fascinated with nuclear weapons. The nuclear capacity is being used for power generation. The bigger battle is for grains. In the G8, they fight for grains, they fight for rice, they fight for wheat. So nuclear weapons, no place. So technology wasted, no place. Like the whole of Haryana, I live in Haryana, and the whole of Haryana has lost their wells because of electronic waste. So where will this electronic waste go? So there are bad times for us. If we create unnecessary technology, we are not the non-developmental people, anti-growth people, but sensible people who are demanding embeddedness of technology, which should come from the people, not from the top, not from the West, not from any other culture. So this is where I end, and now it is open for discussion. 101 questions could be asked on what Charu spoke today. So Charu, you are in the midst of trouble for answering questions. Thank you very much, Arjun, Simi, Anshul.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, thank you for your comments. So we could start the discussion. Can we have Chetan sir to start first? So please unmute.
Thank you very much, Charu, for giving me this opportunity. I'm actually completely stupefied with every word that Dr. Charu Malhotra and Professor Amita Singh have mentioned. And I actually agree. I will not take very long. And I now actually speak from my role as the founder of a civil society organization, Data Mission Foundation, which is a community-based organization. I endorse every single word of whatever Professor Amita Singh and Dr. Charu Malhotra said. So the wise men saw it all coming. And I also agree with Professor S.N. Tripathi, Mr. S.N. Tripathi. But all of you leading distinguished speakers are missing one very important point, which is we the people, we the consumers. So the wise man saw it all coming. I mean, hundreds of years ago, he said, why are you wearing English clothes? Why don't you make bonfires of it? And they did make bonfires. So the problem is with us as consumers. Unless we create this Atmanirbharta amongst the consumers. Professor Tripathi, Dr. Tripathi, I'm from Pune University. We made Param the supercomputer in 80s. We had a very thriving hardware industry. We had a very, very thriving software industry in the 80s. But the market forces, and sorry to say the bureaucrats in Delhi, they completely killed the Indian hardware industry. They completely demolished whatever software this there. We became just the slave masters of the global tech. And nothing is going to come out of this, by the way. I don't have to repeat. Dr. Charu Malhotra has spoken a lot on disruptiveness, on lack of data privacy, cyber security. Actually, what fears me the most is the Atmanirbhar this and that too, their inclusion in the defense technologies. So my question to everyone and Dr. Charu Malhotra is that we know what is happening across our border. And we also know that how they are protecting all these technology big giants. So rather than bemoaning and cursing the big technology giants, who, as Professor Amita Singh ji rightly said, they are being given the head of the state treatment, be it Mark Zuckerberg, be it Bill Gates, be it anybody, or Jeff Bezos, Amazon. And we are remembering our people only when election time, only when their livelihoods are threatened. So I was actually surprised to see where the government of India is imploring people yesterday that for Diwali, you please don't go out to shopping outside. They're not worried about the neighborhood kirana store. They're not worried. I said, aap sara kuch online purchase kariye. So when you purchase online, what is going to happen? There are going to be hundreds and thousands of these neighborhood stores that in any case are feeling threatened and seeing all this disruptiveness. And it's a very, very major disaster in making. If the policy makers and more importantly, the policy implementers, Dr. Charu Malhotra, you were with us when we had started the discussion in the late early 2001 when Satyanarayana sir and his predecessor Chandrasekhar sir, it was almost mandated that the government would encourage and support only the open source and the open systems. I think it's very well documented. But how Microsoft and the proprietary software licenses, how they overcame this. The government played a footsie to all that. The government always plays footsie. The Mandarin sitting in the CGO Electronics Niketan and the others have to actually imbibe whatever Charu Malhotra has said, that the threats of hundreds and thousands gentlemen and ma'am, it's moving to a civil war kind of situation where we would actually see civil war in this country, the utter joblessness, the hopelessness, the gender biases about which Amita Singh ji has said. So unless on these emerging technologies, unless on this AI, we have the regulatory, जिसको हिंदी में कह सकते हैं अंकुश लगाने का दायित्व आपके पास है. आप एक democratically elected government है. आपके पास, I mean, if China is deciding when Alibaba is to come and when Alibaba is to go out, whether they want Google, they don't want Google, there's nothing that stops our government of India, our democratically elected government of India to make those choices. There's nothing that stops us as Indian consumers to do exactly what the great man told us, what our saint told us, that do not use foreign goods. Why don't we use Ku? Why don't we use, and why are we not encouraging? So this is all I have to say. And if this is done, I will just conclude my remarks by this thing with something as any question agarbatti. So currently I'm involved in doing for a PMO sponsored project on Atmanirbhar Bharat, of which agarbatti industry is a component. Most of you perhaps may not know that all agarbattis that we light in front of our gods and goddesses are used to be from China made until about 2 years ago. So they made a decision to ban the import of agarbattis from China because they wanted to promote the Indian bamboo. India produces maximum bamboo, but all the bamboo that used to come for agarbatti was coming from Vietnam and elsewhere. The perfumery was coming from Hong Kong and all the big industry and the corporate. So it is our businesses, our corporates, our government, the muscular jingoism, which is at fault. And unless these forces are controlled, I'm sorry, we have a very, very disastrous future ahead of us. I'll be very happy to be part of this discourse and any policy document that are required to be written from the civil society and from the people's perspective. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Amit Dubey, sir, over to you.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity and be part of this intellectual panel. And I was really overwhelmed with these sessions by Dr. Tripathi and Charu Malhotra and Professor Amita Singh. I think they have covered most of the things which I wanted to say, but I will just add few of my own experiences here. And though I appreciate their viewpoints and I agree most of their viewpoints, but there are a few points where I have my own opinions as well. And I don't see that gloomy picture in future. I see many of these things have happened. Those are going to give us positive return in near future. A few of these points which I would like to mention and the successfully the government of India has done about the CoWIN and Arogya Setu kind of thing. And CoWIN platform which we have developed, which is an Atmanirbhar example. They were able to successfully vaccinate 100 crores of people. I think that was an amazing example because it has all those technology components which are required to for any sort of this scale of successful having this scale for any such mobile application. I think requires most of these ingredients. Those are quite critical nowadays from security aspects, from scalability aspects, from operational aspect, from managing aspect, from process aspects, and verification aspects. So I think this is a wonderful example. But as Professor Charu has mentioned about multi-words, Facebook is coming up with a new experience of their social media platform, which is called multi-words. They'll be having a parallel universe. They'll be having possibilities of purchasing lands, shops, and assets in this universe. Now, if they provide these kind of functionalities and many other things, as you like revolutionizing education, revolutionizing all other industries as well, because you'll have most of these components available in that universe as well. Now, so we can assume there'll be a parallel economy. And that economy will not have any regulation from government of India because we can't even control Facebook today. How will we control the multiverse, which is because the jurisdiction is not here. I think that is going to create lots of challenges for sure in future. Today, we don't have any clarity and there is an ambiguity for cryptocurrency in India. It is not a legal tender. It is not recommended by RBI. No government, no banks are allowed to do any exchange, even though there are hundreds of applications available on cryptocurrency. In last 1 week, I have seen many ads on IPL. If any one of you is watching IPL, I think every ad is of cryptocurrency exchange or mobile wallet. People are using those wallets and investing money. And that amount of money, if you see the valuation of that company, whether it is, most of these companies are operating from Singapore, and the people are using all other bypass means to put money in those wallets and then purchasing cryptocurrencies, which is not a legal tender. Now, so these kind of challenges we'll have in future, because the economy, there'll be a parallel economy, there'll be parallel currency, and then there'll be a parallel regulation system, because then there'll be few other holistic guys, those will regulate these kind of systems. They'll not listen the government of India or any other government for say. I think these are the challenges. And then I would like to also mention about the singularity aspects of it. I'm sure many of us know about singularity. So if you refer the Moore's law, which says every year we'll have the processing speed will double and memory size will go half. If we go with that trend, eventually we'll reach to a level when collective intelligence of all the human beings on earth will be lesser than a single computer. So that date is called singularity date. And when they have analyzed that date through an algorithm, they found it will happen in 2045. So 2045, up to August 2045 is a date when we'll achieve this scenario, when a single computer will have more intelligence than the collective intelligence of all human beings. Are we ready for that, or are we running too fast to achieve that? I'm sure many of these inventions that we have done in the past, we were targeting a date, but we achieved before that. We achieved everything well before that. I'm sure we'll achieve singularity also well before that. I'm assuming we are going to touch it in 2030 or 35 for sure. So that is bigger threat for us for sure. We don't know about it. Actually, it is happening around us, and many of us are not aware about it, including multiverse and all kinds of such challenges. Although Dr. Charu has mentioned all other challenges very well, I think this was very exhaustive presentation. I really appreciate for her hard work. She has given all possible angles to that. But then from the legal perspective side, from tech rules, because we are talking about tech rules, I think we have to go a long way. We don't have laws for cryptocurrencies. We don't have laws for data privacies yet. And these are the foundations for any such to grow actually in future. Otherwise, we'll lose most of our, we'll actually release our reins to other hands. Actually, it will not have these regulations, and it will become too late because the data is anyway going out. They have realized very late when we banned these 150 Chinese apps, and most of our data was already out, and they were able to profile our people. And I have seen lots of such threats already, where such data is exploited. So I think we should have a little proactive approach and fast approach. I have seen in government policy implementations and policy formation, the process is very slow, very, very slow. I have pitched this request in 2017, a list of Chinese applications where I personally have submitted this list to CERT and MITI, where I identified list of applications, those were actually leaking out the data of Indian users, or they were actually having some vulnerabilities in it. But the decision came very late. So I think in a similar way, we see the cybersecurity strategy is yet not out. The data privacy bill isn't pending. I think it takes too much time for us to implement and regulate the system. Until then, we lose a lot. We are already losing money because data is next fuel, and this all data is going out. It is already in other hands. I think we should take corrective actions here. So these are a few of my submission here. I think most of us have already covered things, so I don't have any specific statement to add. But, thank you for the opportunity, and it was really a pleasure to listen to all of you.
Thank you so much. So Charu ma'am, over to you. Would you like to reflect to all the points which have been raised? Please, Anita.
I think let the audience raise questions.
Yeah, we can have the questions, and at the end of it, Charu can answer all the questions. You can note down the questions.
Right, ma'am, we have one question here by Ajit Shashadri sir. Just to know, any work has 3 levels, that those are managerial, operational, and support functions. Top 2 are human required, managerial and operational, and only third can be done by robots. Can we have a work scenario like this, or otherwise? Please comment. Question for Charu.
Arjunji, you're not very audible. I would just go to the chat, question answers, and have a look. Or would you like to repeat? I just go through the question answers. Three levels, yeah, I can see it's 3 levels: managerial, operation, and support. Top 2 human is required. Third can be done by robots. Can we have a work scenario like this or otherwise? I shared it. There is a pyramid, like you have a management pyramid of bottom of the pyramid, and then you have transactional, operational, and strategic. We have robots for all the 3 things. In fact, there is a study which says that majority of the countries would have robo soldiers by 2030. So please, it's not just that mundane chores are done by robots. Robots are several kinds. Robots are not just what you see in a Sophia or a Rashmi. Robots are everywhere in all kinds. You have bots infecting your networks. You have bots which change shape. And so please don't just think of robots as one kind of shape only. That's all.
Actually, I would like to add here something, because Dr. Charu mentioned a very interesting thing. Will we have the classification of robots like humans? Jatiwada and all, she referred it very nicely. I think it is inherent. It is inherent, and it happens even today. So in any computer system, if you observe, there are some high priority processes, and there are some low priority processes. So if suppose we need to take a decision, if there's any interrupt to be made, we always kill the processes those are of low priority, and those are not required. Even at process level, we don't have democracy there. We have some special, we have given a special privilege, some process, and that is required. Otherwise, we'll not be able to sustain. And that is the way technology grow. It is inherent. I think it is not wrong. It is right. If we have computers and we have robots, those are performing critical jobs, intellectual jobs, they'll be given privileges for sure. A robot which is doing mundane jobs, they'll be giving less privileges for sure. It is natural. We can't give them equal privilege. Otherwise, we'll not be able to do justice actually. So this is something which I think we should not worry about, because this is happening. This is natural. Even in caste system of India, I truly believe this was natural. It was not created, because in any such system it happens. If you are intellectual, I'll listen to you. I'll not listen to a person who is less intellectual. So we take this call unknowingly, and it is a natural reaction of an human. So I think this is something which we should not worry too much, but it is going to happen for sure.
My concern is, Amitji, I agree. I don't want taboos. I don't want silos. I mean, if a robo wants to convert from a Brahminical order to a Kshatriya order, why not? So that's my concern. I mean, and similarly for caste, the reason I was against caste and I'm still against caste is the kind of, barriers it puts around a personality and profession. And that is where it hurts. So we don't want technology. We want a technology agnostic society, which is leveled.
Actually, so I'll add to this. Suppose you have a factory where we have thousands of robots, and these thousands of robots the job of that robot is to paint that dust or that car bonnet or something. Now, tomorrow you want that robot which is used to paint that car should become a lawyer, should take the decisions for any legal thing. I think it is not possible. And the kind of change requires to do that is of no use. So I think we should rather changing them, I think we should value them equally. We should start adapting a process where we should not value the person based on the kind of job that person is doing, rather the value that he is giving. I think that is something which will help us, instead of changing at robotics level. I'm not putting this for human level. Human level, yes, you can evolve, you can learn, you can grow. But robots, the way we have right now, the robots, I think they are designed for a focused work. They are trained for a focused work. Even if we implement AI is the data that we use to develop that AI is for a focused work. So there are robots, they can design, they can write book. There are robots, they can become lawyers, and then there are mechanical robots. So I think that classification is anyway there.
Amitji, I think we should take this discussion outside. But I would just close this discussion with my submission. My submission is the whole premises of AI learning. I was a programmer of AI way back in 1985. So the whole premises of deep learning and reinforcement learning is that they learn, they evolve. So if a robot that is painting a factory shop seeks a promotion after 2 years, what would you do? And that is an algorithm which will work on its own. Please don't forget that. You cannot classify them and forget them like any other machine. It has capability to grow, to evolve like a hydra. Okay, so I would just park the discussion here with the permission of the moderate, but I think we must connect outside this to discuss this further. Don't forget, there are language tools, there are robots that are writing poetry and creating artwork as good as the original artists. How is that happening? It is something to be very
no, I'll quote it because this is the flaw of our education system. We want everybody to become doctor engineers. We don't appreciate writers and painters. I think we should not force every robot to become that. We should rather appreciate every robot for the work that they are doing. I think that should be the approach. Anyways, I think we can take a few more questions from the audience.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Arjun and Professor Amita, ma'am.
Yes.
I was just thinking, because right now others are thinking too. So, can we, in the process of advancement of technology, design softwares which prevent the regressive elements, like, for example, caste, like gender, like poverty, class, race, religion. It can eliminate any reference to it. And if we can, just put a gauze that prevents the growth of this learning in a robot, then probably we can do a basic minimal. We can assure that certain things would not grow beyond a point. Untouchability. Working in India, we still have more than 400 pockets of untouchability. And no government focuses on that. So we never know that who's behind a technology to do that. So some of these softwares, maybe the government can invest into developing softwares that can be goes to extension of these regressive ideas into technology.
Ma'am, is this a remark or is it a question?
It's a question because you know best about the technology. So is it possible that this can happen?
Yes, ma'am. Can I share just one slide with you to answer this?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, because, I had proposed an ethical framework for AI algorithms, which I told you got the best paper award in ITU. So I'm just sharing that how do you imbue knowledge or ethics in such machines? Okay. So this is just, and probably it will answer the first question also. So I was just trying to dig out this slide. Well, this is the model I gave. It has a lot of precursor and post components to this, presentation. However, I'm just sharing what was my suggestion of imbuing ethics in technology, which is AI based. I divided, I said to write robotics or AI algorithms, you need to have IQ. So IQ is a precursor to anything which is AI. Okay. However, in an individual who's writing these programs based on algorithms, we also need to give them EQ, which is emotional quotient, which is on my y-axis, and spiritual quotient, which is on my x-axis. Okay. Now, for designing robots, which are probably doing routine jobs like that question came to us, assembly line production, restaurant robots, weather forecasting. We just need, or maybe cybersecurity, Amit ji's favorite topic, network management intrusion, which is just a routine understanding of huge data or network or nodes or points. I can have sufficient IQ, which is a precursor, and low EQ and low SQ. Okay. However, when I move up this level, when I come to those jobs like telemedicine, teleconsultation, facial recognition, predicting user behavior, this is, or for that matter, we talked about Alexa throughout. Okay. So now we need to design machines which are having medium and complex medium complexity jobs. So they need to be more inclusive, like they should not do that Trump-like Twitter to women. They need to be more contextual. They need to be more empathetic, and hence emotional quotient should be high. And there should be some quotient of spirituality also in these machines. Okay. Then we come to the third x-axis, the third quadrant, ethical learners, which is higher complexity jobs. Okay. For example, I talked about Industry Revolution 4.0. And I also talked about cobots, that is human and bots working together. I talked about weaponized drones. I talked about Rashmi and Sophia, both are humanoids. We talked about smart homes. Now, this is a point where individuals' lives are getting affected. Okay. And this is the point where my algorithms should not just have IQ, which was already a precursor, but very high level of SQ and some emotional component also. Okay, but when we come to the top of the pyramid, when I talked about alter ego of my political leaders, okay, in robots, when I talked about strategic decision being made by machines as decision support systems for global leaders or policymakers in an organization or a country, this is the time when lots of lives are at stake. Okay, this is the time when I have to go back to, I love that theory, ma'am. I learned it during my PhD days from IIT Delhi, Gaia theory. You know, everything is interconnected. Okay, so we need now Gaia sensitive global policies, and my programmer who's working to design such algorithms for creating such robots, which are very complicated strategic decision making where lives of millions are at stake. Then that programmer should have highest emotional quotient and highest spiritual quotient. This was just one framework I gave. If you would read the application, it's like a big paper. But thankfully, in those days, ma'am, this is, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, the West got up and they noticed this paper. And ma'am, there was so much debate to whether award this paper or not. Because I was coming with a lot of Eastern philosophies while creating this framework. And I was in a conference or in a platform which was totally controlled by technocrats. So, I mean, it took them time and it is still being referred a lot. It is an essential learning of various international universities now. So I'll just stop sharing here, but I think I have answered your question and the previous question also.
Yeah, you have. Very well done.
Thank you, ma'am.
There's a question from Swarnmay Tripathi.
Yes.
Yeah, what is the question? I'm not able to see that.
Ma'am, more of the extension of the same, that when majority are not having operational knowledge of modern technology, how can we ensure participation of people in deliberation or access to service or whatever measure we take?
Yeah.
Yes.
The great.
Ma'am, can I take this?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Why
And thank you, Mr. Tripathi, for this question. This has been the question which is closest to my heart.
Charu, this is Professor Swarnmay Tripathi from Utkal University.
Okay, ma'am, it's a delight to, to have this kind of audience, and I would love to be challenged if I'm wrong somewhere, but I would love to share what is closest to my heart as well. Okay, I mean, when like ma'am said, when I was growing with all my technical baggage, I'm an MCA and then from my Thapar University and this, I was constantly sitting in insulated rooms and writing programs without being aware of who's consuming them in what context. And then the journey started. I went to 600 villages, and I think I should say 601 because I went to Sundarbans with you, ma'am. And I stayed in those villages and I tried understanding their needs and aspirations for technology adoption in that context. And one thing that I completely understood is the more you expose people to technology in a user-friendly, technology-agnostic manner, the more they are receptive to giving ideas. So I would just culminate this discussion by saying sensitization and advocacy on one hand, and constant ease of use and easy user interfaces and easy user experiences on the other hand will help us to evolve technology. You don't need to be literate. You just need to be a user, like STD machines, like smartphones. Okay. Now, the more you expose people to user-friendly technologies in a user-friendly manner, you yourself come up as a user to decide on what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Second is an equally important onus of making this as simplified as possible, which we call as cybersecurity and privacy by design. It is not on the user, it is on the manufacturer that I have a single button, click on a web portal or on a phone so that user is able to use. I should have multilingual interfaces. So technology is not alien to society. The only thing is, the more technology is being used, the more simplified it gets over its own evolution time. It's like Maslow's theory for technology. I think we can evolve it together. So, for example, pick up the railway reservation website, the way it started and the way it is now. It is only because over a period of time it got used, and then you started getting apps, and then you started getting alerts. Earlier, for even checking up one waitlisted ticket, people had to go to irctc.co.in, and now you get push SMS which says that your seat is waitlisted or confirmed. This is a very raw example, but I can just say, Professor Tripathi, with a lot of confidence, that the more technology agnostic an application is, more friendly it would become. And of course, sensitization and advocacy is very important. Thank you.
Right. So, ma'am, we are good over time. Shall we move ahead for a way forward round from all the panelists?
Yeah, we can do that as it is, because your time is almost over now.
Ma'am, shall we start in a reverse order? Shall we start with Amit Dubey, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Dubey, sir, over to you. Amit, sir. Amit, sir, are you there? Okay, no problem. We can start, then go to Chetan, sir.
Hello.
Yeah. Chetanji, we are here if you can speak.
No, I have already expressed what I would like to say. I think, we have to work in a collaborative framework and with a clear policy direction, collaborate with the government, collaborate with the policy planners and implementers very rigorously in this extremely critical domain. Only then Atma Bharat tech arena will be successful.
Yeah.
Right.
Tripathi ji. Tripathi ji is not around.
Sir is here in the meeting. Tripathi, sir, if you are here, would you like to say anything? No issues. Then Charu, ma'am, your concluding thoughts and way forward.
Yes, the way forward is like Professor Tripathi also said, and like Professor Amita Singh, and I think each of us are saying the same. We need to join hands. We need to co-create. We need to ensure that advocacy and sensitization is as important. It's not just capacity building of people who are at policy level or bureaucratic level, it's also for the grassroots. And last but not the least, I very firmly believe is the greenness of technology, Like Amit ji, I remember you talked about blockchain. I had deliberately not picked it up because blockchain that I don't study or research, I would not vouch for it because it's not a very environment friendly technology. It has its own issues of carbon emissions, the kind of servers we are having. So there are two ways: either work on proof of work in Bitcoin or in blockchain, or proof of stake. But proof of stake is not as decentralized. So I think let's not forget, my final takeaway to each of you is, let's not forget the whole purpose is to focus on sustainable development goals. Okay, each and every component of that should resonate in my mind when I want my country to be in TechAid or Atmanirbhar Bharat in technology. So if you would focus on each and every block which is talking to another block, all the 17 of them, then I'm sure we'll never make a mistake. Thanks a lot.
Meeta ma'am, your concluding thoughts.
You know, a lot has been said today, and the lecture today has been a treat on technology and a vision about technology. A lot of learning has taken place, and you know, nothing much to say at this point, but appreciate a lot, Dr. Arjun, your effort to bring this wonderful team together from bureaucracy, from technology, from business. You know, everyone has really been looking into it. Now, you know, Charu's lecture has been very comprehensive. On the other side, we see that Dr. Amit Dubeji has also brought us to a world, a realistic world, you know, in reality, what exists and what we have to live with. And Dr. Chetan Sharma, you know, from the business, he's a technologist who is serving the government programs for ages. And there's hardly any department left where he has not handled their data collection and assimilation and all those corroboration techniques. And he looks pretty, you know, little discouraged in his expressions, because there is something definitely going wrong about it. Because, and from what the assessment I could get is that there is some mismatch going on between the technology and the communities, because this gap is only widening. Because if you create technology, then you must have more people using technology. But technology is becoming so expensive that there are more people within my colony itself. You know, you take up the washerwoman, you take up the presswala, you take up the driver, you take up the cleaners, 5-6 cleaners from the municipal corporation who come over there. They have all taken their kids out of the school because they could not cope up with buying a smartphone and carrying on the e-classes. So if in one little colony, at least 70, 80 children have gone out of school, then I'm sure it is a big disaster for the country. And did we plan a policy equivalent to managing or giving a space to these children? As Chetanji said, that the declaration was loud from the ivory tower that don't go to the market to buy. But there are some people who only sit during these times. They bring their stuff from their village and suburban corners to sell it off during the festive season. There are some who put their small shop only during Navratri, only during Dashera, only during Diwali. Are we aware of such a culture? Or we are so technologically determined that we have forgotten that that ever existed? Because today we are in very swanky apartments and Haveliya. So that is the sensitivity which has gone for a shot completely. And that is what disturbs people who are sensitive to the communities, who are working with the grassroots, who are still maintaining their contacts with the poorest of the poor, who come to serve us in the cities. So I think with that sensitivity, we can put an end to this discussion and hope that technology will be more sensitive, accommodative, and absorbed into the problems of those who need to be included. And inclusive technology need to be generated. Thank you very much, organizers, IMPRI, for this wonderful discussion and wonderful learning process that I have gone through, and most of us who've attended have been able to look into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Amit sir has also joined. Sir, do you have any 1 minute key takeaways you want to add? Yes.
I always I try to look positive for the situation, because there is it's easy to comment on others' work, but when we are in the same boat, we need to get some creative solutions. I think there are lots of efforts already being taken, because if we allow people to do everything what they want, it may also create chaos. So sometimes, for example, I'll give an example of freedom of speech versus Facebook fake news factory. Because if we want that freedom of speech should be the ultimate thing, the government should not intervene on any such thing which anybody is writing. Then Facebook becomes a place of crime. And they try to bully people. They try to create lots of fake news. In fact, in recent Facebook report, they have said, like, during West Bengal elections, almost 40% of the content that has been produced on Facebook was of fake news. Now, that is an shocking information, because that is changing the mindset of the people. That is changing lots of, I think that is shaking the democracy as well. So that is a bigger challenge. I always say social media is the fifth pillar of democracy. Now, how to use that fifth pillar effectively to sustain your democracy, because you can't rely completely on freedom of speech, because if we allow that, it is a challenge. And if we regulate it, then also it is a challenge. So we need to take a balanced approach every time when we use technology versus non-tech sort of approaches. I think that is the biggest question, and we need to figure it out. How should we achieve that? How should we create an ecosystem where we can take a balanced approach? And that's why these regulations are required. The criminal who is actually spreading that fake news should be punished, should be made accountable for that. Right now, there is no such legal provisions for them. So that's why they are using it as a freeway tool. And I think this is disastrous. So for any such other technology that we are seeking in near future and we'll be adopting it, I think a clear-cut balanced regulation is required. We'll leave everything on the technocrats. I think it will be a disaster. I agree with all of you. But then when we put these regulations, also there should be a democratic approach, because we cannot give that power to someone, and that can also become disastrous. So this is a really difficult question. It is not that easy to solve, and I'm leaving you all with this question: how should we use a midway to technology itself, like blockchain, like any other such possible options? Those are there. Those help us to ensure democracy in technology.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you all. So to give a formal vote of thanks, now invite Anshula. Anshula, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Anshula Mehta, the Senior Assistant Director at IMPRI. And on behalf of the Institute, I would like to formally thank all of you for joining us today for this web policy talk on the impact of tech rules on India's Atmanirbhar tech arena. We are grateful to our speaker, Dr. Charu Malhotra, for taking out the time to be with us today and for delivering this very important and thought-provoking presentation. Thank you, ma'am. And we are grateful to Professor Amita Singh for joining us as the moderator for today. Thank you, ma'am. We are grateful to Shri S.N. Tripathi for taking out the time from his busy schedule to deliver remarks for this session and for sharing his insights on the theme and the issue. Thank you, sir. And we are grateful to our discussants, Mr. Amit Dubey and Mr. Chetan Sharma, for sharing their perspectives with us. And of course, we thank all our participants who joined us here on Zoom or on Facebook Live, or will be with us later on YouTube or on our podcast. Thank you. And I hope that you continue to tune in to future episodes of Public Policy, as well as our other web policy talks. Thank you again, and I wish you all a very good evening.
Thank you
So much. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for inviting me, ma'am. And
Thank you, everybody. Aru ma'am, you were awesome. Thank you.
Same here. I like the interactivity. Thank you, Steve. I'm leaving with your permission.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.